And we are live here today on
Whoa.
the conservative. Hold on. Here today, there we go. Here today on the conservative echo chamber. Listen, this is a rough draft. This is not the final. We're gonna keep rolling anyways because that's just how we do. I'm joined here with my co-host Josh, who has returned apparently from Siberia or somewhere in northern Russia, where a man must grow a great large mustache and beard just to survive the cold winters. Tell us more about it, Josh.
I lied to you about Siberia. Truth was, I was on safari, and I thought I might enjoy the experience a bit more if I myself grew a glorious mane.
A glorious man in the sweltering heat of Africa. A good choice, my good sir.
Ah, yes.
Wait, you said okay. Why is your why? Like, see, this is the rage now. What I've heard, it could be not, but I don't know. Maybe I feel like really attracted and threatened by you at the same time.
That's how I interact with most people, really. But I wasn't actually planning
combination
on
of fear and attraction.
basically.
Okay.
Well, I wasn't planning on doing it like this, but you see, the lesbian who cut my hair last thought she'd try something new on me because not too many people are okay with just doing whatever, especially before graduation.
Mm-hmm.
That's a no-no. And so she was talking to her friend who I'm pretty sure she was flirting with, but I can't really tell. My gaydar is broken.
So it wasn't actually lesbian. It was like a maybe lesbian, like a mabian.
Hey, it may be broken, but pretty sure.
Did she have like a no men allowed sign like right along her waist? Is that how you know?
That doesn't do well when you're cutting hair, although she was saying like, okay, and so we're gonna do it like that. I'm gonna shape it, and just for you, I'm gonna do it like this. And the mustache, what do you think? Do you think it's okay? But I'm gonna do it.
But see, I've had women do that for me, and they've clearly been straight. Let's just say that, based on certain cues that went on during the hair cutting conversation.
Well, let's just say there were other cues going on during the hair cutting conversation. That leads me to believe.
Okay, well, I mean, maybe like that. They go and do the whole thing where the girls go to the bathroom, but they go to the bathroom together. Maybe.
Oh. Well, look, she was from New York City, and so everyone's at least slightly lesbian from that place, especially
even the gay men. Even the gay men are slightly lesbian over in New York. It's basically a prerequisite.
I think it's in the drinking water.
Really, so there actually is it's not a choice, and it's not even a gene; it's a chemical. Like the government has been experimenting with us, and there's like fluoride, and then there's like a lesbian chemical in there as well.
People almost avoided it by diluting it by adding sugar to it, but then they banned the sodas, and so they're like, no, we're going to convert the entire population by 2017.
That's right. I'm not going to make any lesbian jokes. Not going to make any lesbian jokes. Anyways, my fine furred friend.
Wait, was that a lesbian joke?
No, because I wasn't referring to your waist.
Oh.
Josh is the kind of man with the beard growing not only from his chin, but also his armpits. Anyways.
Nope, the world is not ready. They must wait. The world is not ready.
So, in terms of culturally appropriating homeless people, I was on Facebook the other day, and I saw this marvelous picture of Stephen Colbert with a quote next to it, and the quote reads as such: "If this is going to be a Christian nation that doesn't help the poor, either we have to pretend that Jesus was just as selfish as we are, or we've got to acknowledge that he commanded us to love the poor and serve the needy without condition, and then admit that we just don't want to do it." And one of my friends, who I have a lot of respect for, normally, posted this on Facebook, and out of respect, he will remain nameless, but he posted this on Facebook and said, "Oh, those silly Christians! Don't you know you're something like? Don't you know you're supposed to, basically saying, oh yeah, all Christians are hypocrites because apparently we as a Christian, And I took exception to this so hard.
Step one.
Step one. Okay, let's point out the fact that if you ask, I mean, I would say that this used to be a Christian nation. It's not anymore. It used to be a Christian nation. So on the first half, this is no longer a Christian nation. So condemning the nation as a whole doesn't quite work, and saying that it doesn't hold up to its moral proclivities. The second part is even if we were judging the nation as a whole, America fucking beats everybody. I'm sorry, it does. Like in terms of foreign aid, America outpaces every country. I think what was the statistic? Like gives away more foreign aid like the first 5 countries combined.
And it's more than that, considering that half the population often doesn't pitch.
Yeah, no, we're not even counting the Christians who send foreign aid over to charities and stuff to take care of like homeless kids and children in like really poor communities and clothes people and feeds them and gives them education. We're not even counting that. The U.S. alone puts out billions of dollars in foreign aid, more than any other country. So on that alone, that quote is severely false. And let's also acknowledge the fact that you don't go to a comedian for philosophical or religious advice.
Especially not Stephen Colbert.
Especially not Stephen Colbert. He's good for snarky comments. That's what he does. He doesn't make enlightened stuff. Okay? His statement is blatantly false on any level. Now, of course, the way my friend took it was actually the way that other people might take it, which was, the individuals, like the Christian majority within America are a whole bunch of hypocrites, which is funny to me because this friend in particular likes to argue with me about climate science all the time. And every time we get into a fight, he's like, oh, you need to show me like these peer-reviewed journals and these, statistics and stuff that has to be, from these people that are just above any question. They must have complete authority on the issue before I will listen to a single thing that you have to say. But on the other hand, when it comes to moral proclivities of 350 million people, the word of a comedian who says something clever that he likes the sound of, that's enough. That's the word. That's what it is.
But John, it was peer-reviewed. All of his friends agree.
all of his friends probably agree. They probably weren't Christian. They probably don't know any Christians. That's the part that bugs me. Is like okay, yes, we haven't solved poverty. No one can solve poverty, no matter what, unless everyone's dead. What was the things? The 2 things that will always be are what? Death and taxes. Also poverty. In part,
the poor will always be among us. There's a reason why.
Yeah, and it's as long as there is striation amongst the different classes of people, as long as there is economic striation, as long as there are people with various amounts of wealth, there will always be a bottom quintile. Period. Always. There will always be. You can't make a bottom quintile disappear.
Look, it even goes a step further than that.
Richer, but you can't. It's always going to be there. Anyways,
Thomas Sowell actually takes it a step further. He recently came out with, I think it was 5th edition to his Basic Economics, and he was doing an interview and saying, it shouldn't surprise us that we don't get equal outcomes. Rather than saying, why are we so unequal, say, was it ever tenable for us to be equal in the first place? For example, think of the Mississippi River versus, what was it? The Congo River, I think it was. Mississippi River, it goes... no, not the Nile.
I don't know.
Congo.
Sure. Let's pick that one.
The difference was Mississippi River is uniquely suited because it only goes down about 4 inches per mile. That's crazy for rivers. So if you want to transport things, the Mississippi is the one to go. I think it was the Congo River. Don't quote me on it.
Okay.
It goes down about 1,000 feet total.
Well then,
all other things being equal, just on the river alone,
right?
It's useless. Absolutely useless for transporting
goods.
Because
it shallows out too often and too many times.
What was it, like 30 cataracts just in the one river? You're not going to be able to ship anything on it. You can't,
especially long, heavy, slow barges.
Now imagine that was just one geographical. The topography alone can make these differences. Now imagine what things like culture.
Are you trying to say, Josh, that mankind is like a river? Some men are like the Mississippi, other men are like the Congo. Some men can carry a lot of things, and some men just drop 1,000 feet for every mile that they go. Is that what you're trying to say, Josh? Although no,
That
the
was
fact that human life varies, the fact that people are different, people have different levels of motivation, different levels of natural skill. Some people find out what they're naturally skilled at very quickly. Other people don't do it until later in life. So you would expect that someone who is naturally suited to something, who finds out what it is very early on, who works on that skill, who works hard on that skill, is probably going to make more depending on what job they take than a person who maybe isn't motivated and doesn't find out what they're skilled at until they're like 50, which happens to some people. To expect people to have the same level of economic success is ridiculous. And so there will always be some people who are richer and some people that are poor. Even if you take out the whole idea about greed or capitalism or government taxing one side and redistributing the other, there will always be poor. So the fact that they're poor exists is not evidence of Christians failing. So on every level, it just pisses me off. It really does. Like the level, because this is the kind of quote that someone puts up, not to make a point, especially given that the person who put up the quote is an atheist. This is all about being snarky and self-righteous. And it does. You don't have, if you're going to sit there and be smug and snarky and self-righteous, you automatically deserve to be slapped down from your position hard. As much as I respect that person, no, and I confront. You saw it.
I read some of that. I wasn't allowed to comment. I was sitting there.
Said some. Okay, I wasn't mean to him, but I was pretty.
Shots were fired.
Shots were fired. Yes. Like there will be some wound licking later on tonight, and it's one of the very few things, not this topic in general, but like when people act that way, it's one of the quickest ways to get me to be very, very aggressive and to stop pulling punches. Like I would, as long as someone else will treat me with respect, I will treat that person with respect. I will have conversations with people that I completely disagree with, and we can be totally fine. But if you sit there and pretend to be better than me, and sit there on this level of like this false moral, the self-righteous fake high ground where you're like, yes, I'm just better than you because I know what's right and you don't, and I'm just going to look down on you now. Oh, you poor person, you poor uneducated, unenlightened person who just doesn't know right from wrong. Let me educate you because you clearly don't know. Oh, you silly conservative religious nutbags. You teabaggers, I just feel so sorry for you guys. It's a good thing that we love free speech, otherwise I would have to crush you. Like, I'm sitting there going like, what fucking world do you live in, man? What world do you live in? America gives more money to more countries than anybody else. We fucking destroyed Japan in World War II, and then we built them up. We bombed the shit out of Germany, and then we built them up. At least our half of Germany. Our half.
Like we rebuilt France when they sat around for most of it.
Right.
Like,
let's not forget, like in Berlin, if you look at it at night from a satellite point of view, you can see the divide in the city still, because of the lights that were used, where one side is like bluer and the other side is more yellow because of such a vast difference between the two. Like we had West Berlin.
Yeah. And
by the time they knocked down the wall, the economic difference, no one was trying to escape into East Berlin. No one was trying to get over there. Just like no American is trying to escape into Cuba. It's always the other direction. It's always the East Berliners were trying to get over to the West. And it was always the Cubans getting on rafts that were in shark-infested waters trying to get into America. There is no American that I have ever heard of who said, you know what? I could use some free healthcare. Come on, Lou. Come on, Susan. We're gonna build a raft and we're gonna go to Cuba. Okay, let's go. Doesn't happen.
North Korea's just a plane ride away. Come on.
That's right, man. There's a saying in Cuba which I love because it's so perfect. And I know I just condemned snarky comments, but this one this is not actually a snarky comment made by a comedian. It's actually a popular saying amongst the Cuban people. And it's this, regarding people who work for the government, which the government owns, I think, like 80% of all businesses in Cuba. We pretend to work and they pretend to pay us. Because that is the effect of socialism, which is not relevant to the idea of helping the homeless. But
well, actually kind of, because it was sold on poor Russian peasants. They're like, hey, this sucks. The Tsar is being awful to us. Let's create a utopian society, and then there won't be poor anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And the Russians, I think, had a similar saying to, we pretend to work, they pretend to pay us. I'm pretty sure Russians said something very similar. I can't recall, though.
Are you sure it wasn't they take us into a building, strip us naked, shoot us, and then we die? Because
no.
Sure. No, that's just what happened.
They wouldn't put that on the advertising posters, John.
I know it doesn't sell as well. It doesn't sell as well as like, we all work together. Yay.
It can't fit on a snooty bumper sticker. And then if it can't fit on a bumper sticker, I'm not listening to it.
This one wouldn't fit on a bumper sticker, but it's close. It's the bumper sticker of Facebook is what it is. The bumper sticker of Facebook, people. Yeah, by the way, if we're going to talk philosophy, this is a hint to the people who haven't figured this out yet. If you're going to talk philosophy, right, go with the words from philosophers, the people who like spend their time thinking about philosophy, not the guys who think about, ooh, how can I make another funny? Similarly, when it comes to funnies, go with a comedian, not a philosopher. When you want to talk physics, go with a physicist. When you want to talk religion, go with a theologian. That way you can get someone who actually knows what the fuck they're talking about and doesn't spew complete, inane, utter like 5 seconds of maybe not 5 seconds. Let's say a minute of research and then another 4 minutes to confirm it that it in fact is true, that America gives more foreign aid than anyone else, that Americans are generally more generous. That I would willing to bet. I've not checked this statistic, but I would be willing to bet hard money, and I don't have much of it, on the fact that Americans as a per capita are more generous than most of, if not all of, the civilized countries in the world.
I think I can help you, John. Now, there are times, especially during the Obama years, it has dipped. And so right now, it's a battle of the Anglos. The most generous nations are almost always English-speaking. Right now, I think it's a battle between the United States, Australia, and...
You mean white cultures, Josh?
Yeah. Fun fact, white, straight, English-speaking cultures.
Oh, damn, we're getting racist and sexist up in here. Or racist up in here. And English. And very culturally appropriationing of ourselves.
Oh, boy.
Because that was the one thing. There's this exchange between Ian McGillis, I believe his name is, correct, and a feminist who and the feminist was saying like, America's not the best culture, and McGinnis turns and says, okay, then what is? And she says, there's a plenty I can name, and like Sweden and English, and he's like, oh, so all white cultures, huh? And she just don't make it laugh, man. She just sits there and just stares at him like, well, I guess that's one way you could phrase it. And he sits there and points like England, less England, but like Sweden, like Norway, France. They're more white than we are. We have way more colored people, or people of color. Which of course is retarded because I have color too. You see this? I have some lovely red in the back from sunburning, and then I have some peach
don't
here,
make me stumble. Hey,
oh. Man, it's a good thing I'm not wearing a V-neck, man, because you would just be all the way down near Sodom and Gomorrah with your thoughts. The point is this, and I don't know how else to describe it. Like this idiotic, bizarre. Just self-attacking and anti-American spirit, because I wouldn't say that, but like just all the time I see all these memes. They're just like, America sucks, America, all this stuff, and I'm sitting here going like, well, let's see, of all the countries to bring democracy to other nations, America's number one. Of all the superpowers that have ever existed, America is the only one that hasn't been imperialist yet. We built fucking nukes, man. We could have destroyed any country we wanted to. We could have basically turned to all of Russia, to all of Japan, and been like, your lands belong to us now, and gotten it handed over without a single peep. Okay?
We could have taken Europe. Their defenses were nothing.
We were their defenses. After World War II, we were their defenses.
Heck, during World War II, you kidding? British got like 20% of their munitions from us, not their musicians. Oh my word!
Well, by the way, we should talk about the fact that basically all the world culturally appropriates our movies from Hollywood. Like that's kind of a problem.
dollar for dollar, all the top 100 movies, top grossing movies of all time, adjusted for inflation and not, all American.
Mm-hmm.
Every single one. Now, some of them were filmed elsewhere, like the Lord of the Rings movies, but every single one. And I checked it.
Yeah, it's. I mean, you don't even have to check to know that's instinctually true. Although I will say, Pan's Labyrinth, of all the foreign films, Pan's Labyrinth, and there's a couple like kung fu movies. I'm not gonna lie, that were just amazing, like just amazing, and not just like Jet Li and Jackie Chan. I mean, like whoever did the Ip Man series. Oh my god. Anyways, hey, when it comes to imperialism, okay. England or Great Britain at one point owned a quarter of all land in the world. Like they even had a phrase, the sun never sets on the British Empire, right? And before that, you had what? You had Alexander the Great, who was also an imperialist. You had Napoleon, who was an imperial. Like just down the line, every single superpower that basically existed at any point, like the Mongolians, Rome, going back through history, basically said, "Now I'm a superpower. I'm going to conquer all your shit."
It's funny. Technically, you could say Canada also falls into that category.
Yeah, that's the other thing that McGinnis points out is like we're not imperialists. We haven't even conquered Canada. You can send out 3 guys with BB guns and you can take over Canada. Okay, we haven't conquered that shit ever. And in terms of taking over, if we were trying to take over land for their value, why wouldn't we just take over Mexico? Like just drop a fucking nuke on Mexico City, right? And we'd have plenty of oil.
Heck, just drop freaking raid on the place.
Well, no, we decimate Japan, right? In World War II. Then we say, you know what? Sorry about that, bro. Let me give you a whole shit ton of money and help you rebuild, and then you can have your own sovereignty back.
It was more than that. They replaced the freaking sand.
Yeah.
John. The sand.
Listen, what's the point in living in Japan if you can't hit the waves a couple of times? You know what I'm saying? We destroyed Berlin and then rebuild at least our half. The other half was supposed to be rebuilt by Russia. That didn't go too well.
Oh, they rebuilt it all right. They made it in Russia's image.
That's right. Then so we have 2 major chances to have huge, and of course, Japan, what do? They go and corrupt our children with PlayStation 2, assholes. And then so next we go into, later on we go into Iraq and we completely, take in like 2 weeks flat. I think we had almost complete victory in Iraq. Like it was nothing. We just came in there like a fucking tank and just took everything. And then when they were doing this whole blood for oil bullshit complaining, we gave all the oil fields back to Iraq. The Iraqi government said, "Here, you can have these back. We don't want them because we're not imperialists." Walked away, and then not a single American oil company won a bid for mining or for drilling those oil fields until a full decade later. That's not imperialism. If we wanted, and Ann Coulter pointed this out really great, like if we wanted to be imperialists, if we wanted to take the oil from Iraq, all we have to do is go over there, send a couple oil tankers, right? And like 2 squads. I mean, it's not like the oil fields are in the middle of the city. You don't have to control a city in order to take over Iraq's oil fields. They're all the way out in the middle of fucking nowhere, man. You put a couple of patrols there and just trucks to cart the shit back and forth, and we could have taken all of it without losing even a tenth of the amount of people that we lost, liberating the Iraqi people from the oppressive government of Saddam Hussein, who killed 50,000 Kurds with gas bombs, who committed genocide upon his own people, whose sons operated multiple rape rooms. Like, who the fuck does that? Fucking rape rooms, man. Okay? And then people have the nerve to say that because we went into Iraq, we're imperialists. No, we're not. We did the exact opposite of what imperialists would do.
Look, if we wanted to fight to our full capacity, we wouldn't have worn down our boots. Taking that place. You kidding? America has the technology. There's only one country in the world that compete with us technologically, and that's Great Britain. And their will was broken decades ago. So if we wanted to, we could take the entire world. What people seem to forget is that America, not only are we not an empire, we never wanted to be.
Right. No, our Navy is the strongest Navy that has ever existed. I mean, there's no one that could. I mean, China has what, one aircraft carrier. We have like what, 8, 9, 10. Plus, let's not also forget the carriers that can carry planes. I think they mostly carry helicopters, but which also carry amphibious assault vehicles. The next war, if it's fought, will not be fought over land, at least for America. It will be fought over sea, and we own the seas. We fucking own it. Okay, the only reason China is able to pull its bullshit, where it's trying to claim parts of the Indian, I believe it's the Indian Ocean, is because America's been like, yeah, whatever you want to do. We don't care. Just do whatever the fuck you want.
Every projection I've seen, every single one that actually analyzes the situation, assumes that the major problem will be that the U.S. won't want to get involved.
Really? That's funny.
Because in any other case, what could they possibly do? China? Yeah, they have over 1 billion people, going on 2 billion people. And there's no nice way to say this, but Chinese manufacturing sucks.
What? And the same thing for Russian manufacturing too. Russian
word.
Half the technology that Russians got came from like an American pilot landing in Russia, and America saying, "Hey, can we have our pilot and our plane back?" And Russians going, "Hold on a minute, hold on 1 minute. We get it back to you in 2 weeks." and we get the plane back, and it turns out that they'd completely taken the plane apart, put it back together, and then 2 months later, we start seeing planes that look like ours, but they're really shitty. Flying with Russian symbols on them.
Is that paper mache?
So yeah, like the rivet, and Bill Whittle was talking about how like the rivets were overlapping, and there was like just really poorly designed. Like the MiG series was basically a pair of wings bolted onto an engine. It wasn't safe. It wasn't secure. It wasn't a reliable flying machine. Like once we got our hands on one, we were like, oh my god, this thing is shit. It wasn't. There was no technology for the Russians for us to steal from the Russians. They stole everything from us. And then there's the Chinese the Chinese government and other
doing that now,
who do the same thing. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure there's some elements of technology that the Chinese have come up with. I'm not going to,
No, they probably stole the rest
came
from
up with
Japan.
gunpowder a couple thousand years ago. That's something, right?
Oh boy, it only took them what, 8,000 years?
Dick move on my part. But like the internet was developed by us. The computer, Microsoft and Apple are both American based. The entire computing energy, the entire information wave. We went from the wow, I'm blanking out here. You know what I mean, Josh.
The third wave of human innovation, the information age.
There we go, the information age. Before it was all in engineering. Before that it was farming. Now it went from the Bronze Age to whatever. Now we're in the information age. I sound so fucking unintelligent right now. Trust me, there's stuff up here.
I actually wrote a paper on this for my senior thesis, and it was only a side point, but it was interesting. I was actually talking about the development of Western music and how even though we derive much of it from the rest of the world, you can't claim that the other cultures are responsible for Western success. I actually made the point, a few paragraphs, that by all rights, China should have been the #1 power, not just in music, but in everything. Science, art, technology. China is the oldest civilization still intact in the world.
Right, and it has plenty of resources.
It has more land than it knows what to do with. It's resource rich. Its people are, compared to their neighbors, well-fed and well-educated. That's not true compared to the modern West, but for its day, China was it. It had thousands of years on the West.
Yeah,
and it had every advantage.
Well, it had every
single one except one.
In terms of resources, yes, but I think the one you're going to say, culture, is the one place where they didn't have an advantage.
For example, talk about the mathematician Qing Fang. Qing Fang was a genius. It's actually a little remarkable the way he managed to work his way around equations in order to come up. He's the guy who came up with the 53 divisions of the octave, which my professor then used as sort of his basis for the global music theory. You think, now, what's that mean? Let's just say, keep it simple, it's an impressive mathematical feat.
Okay.
And he probably would have done more had he not been put to death for accusing a court official of a crime.
Oh, that's lovely.
Yeah. I was trying to find whether or not the official was actually guilty or not. I could not find a single reference to it. I'll look for it later, but
the thing
it didn't matter.
You'll recall, and here's the thing that's important to understand, and I recall this from, I'm just going to be referencing everything I've ever learned. in this. The Heritage Foundation did a video, I believe it was the Heritage Foundation, where they pointed out like up until the 1500s, actually, the West was not that great, and there was two kind of really big changes that happened that really pushed us forward, that allowed us to unleash everything. And the first is that there was a sense of honor and dignity that was finally allowed, both merchants, traders, and inventors. Before that, those people were considered kind of very scummy. Universally very scummy. Like if you were selling something that you didn't make yourself, you were obviously ripping someone off, and you were not to be trusted, and people held those people in disdain. But around the 1500s, and I believe it was around the 1550s, that changed, and people began to accord honor and respect. More importantly, the American translation of honor, respect, to these merchants and traders and inventors, allowed for this boom in new ideas, new inventions, and people able to expand. Because before, you wouldn't make an agreement with a merchant without being extremely, extremely skeptical, because in your mind they were scum and they were trying to take advantage of you. But then in the 1500s, that changed, and people were suddenly more willing to exchange goods and more willing to go out of their way and to risk themselves in order to make something happen. In the 1500s, the Western culture just expanded like crazy, and that led to what eventually became the British Empire, which controlled through its different colonies and platoon or military placements a quarter of the globe. A quarter of the globe. That's
quarter of the land of the globe. Technically, since their navy was pretty much it, they owned a lot
and
more
all of the water too. So,
yeah, basically.
Basically, I mean, like, they're the one. Aren't the British the ones who basically destroyed the pirates?
Yeah. Well, they either destroyed them or recruited them and set them straight. They kind of did both. It was hilarious.
We can sink your ship, or I have a plan. You can just help us out. Why don't we do that? I don't have to blow you. I don't have to waste gunpowder on destroying you. You get to live. It'll be a win-win.
Actually, one of the strategies, they were having trouble with piracy. They actually loosened up the rules a little bit, where it came to the point where there was a saying you could not bribe an English captain, just because the rules were so lax that only idiots would be pirates.
Right.
Can you imagine that in any other culture ever? Can you imagine the Chinese announcing one day, you know what? We're going to ease up on communism for a little while. Hey, guys, we're opening up Google for you, okay? Just because we want you to get along. We want you to see the world. Can you even imagine?
Yeah, and so now in America, we actually have a saying, the squeaky wheel gets the grease, which is, if you're in America and you see a problem, speak up. And, if you have a new idea or, something, speak up and it will be addressed, essentially. Like, if you keep talking loud enough and long enough, people will hear you. In Asia, there's another saying. It is, the nail that sticks out gets hammered. which is a very interesting way of looking at it, non-Americanly. Basically saying, yeah, don't say anything or else you will get in trouble. In certain areas, if you try to come up with a new innovation, people will literally stop you and say, listen, what are you trying to do? Are you trying to get us to do more work for nothing? There is no reward for innovation. That's why the Americans are the one who, the Western culture is the one who does the innovations, and then Chinese and Russians steal it. And I hate to use stereotypes. I very much hate to, but when a stereotype bears out, you do need to bear it in mind.
One way to address the difference between these two cultures is this. The Greeks were naked gay barbarians dancing around fires, offering goat sacrifices to pervert gods, and created the greatest civilization the world has ever seen.
I mean, yeah, that's how you do it,
The Chinese were the most reserved, the most sophisticated, some of the most learned people for most of human history. They did jack diddly.
Except for fireworks. Don't forget that.
Yeah, they're like, oh, look, pretty. Isn't that wonderful? Hey, anyway, the naked barbarians are using them to destroy castles. What did we think of that? The emperor didn't want us using his fireworks.
Yeah. Anyways, the point is, and by the way, Stephen Colbert has unpaid interns in his employ. While he goes on the air, saying, oh yeah, unemployed interns or unpaid interns are basically, slavery. Or as bad as, Basically way back 150 years ago, we didn't have slavery. We actually had unemployed cotton interns.
Pretty sure Jon Stewart does too.
This guy's, without any qualification, labeling an entire country as being hypocritical while being a hypocrite himself. So, Stephen Colbert, you're funny sometimes. You're also a douchebag and a moron, and no one should listen to you ever when it comes to anything other than comedy. And unfortunately, even with comedy, you have like a whole fucking team of people to write your shit for you. You lazy fuck.
You're a one-trick pony. It takes, what, 16 other guys?
Period. End. We're done. Now, how about appropriating those homeless people?
Hey, let me throw in another thing on this. You know what?
Okay.
Because differences in culture does matter. Because the rich in America are getting richer, and the poor in America are getting richer.
Except the past couple of years, but most generally.
Even in the past couple of years, it's true that wages haven't really gone up, but benefits demanded for the same jobs have gone up tremendously.
Well, let's also talk about the fact that when it comes to, and this is the interesting thing, when it comes to technology, the only difference between being rich and being poor is about 20 years, time-wise. In other words, if you're rich, all that means is you'll get access to the best technology about 20 years before it becomes so commonplace that even poor people can afford it. And in
these days, it's 10.
And in the computing world, it's 2 years. It's 2 years. 2 years before the nicest phone you can get is obsolete. 2 years. And in some places, and depending on the technology, it's 1. That's how fast it goes. There's a new phone coming out every single year. The rotation time of a good phone is about 2 years. By then, the new OSs are so advanced that that phone can't even handle it. So if you're a poor person, the difference, and here's the thing: if you're a rich person, you can have what? Maybe if you're a millionaire, what can you have? Like 20 Lamborghinis, a couple Ferraris. You can only drive one car at a time. And most poor people in America have a car. Most poor people in America have, and I mean like by the vast majority, have a car, have a refrigerator, have air-conditioned housing. Okay, you go back 1,000. You go back 2,000 years. The fucking pharaoh covered in gold in Egypt with servants there to fan him because he can't have, because he doesn't have an air conditioner. I mean, he was worse off. He had nothing. He just had some gold and a bunch of guys to go like this at him. That was it, right? And today, if you're poor, if you break a leg, you can go to a clinic. Get free. If you don't have healthcare, you will still get served. You will have to pay money later, but you will still get taken care of even without healthcare. You will have your leg bandaged up. You will not die of infection. You will then go back to after a couple days in this comfortable house or in this comfortable building that serves you kind of shitty food. You go back to your air conditioned house, watch TV all day while someone else at your house drives a car back and forth to the air conditioned grocery store where they bring you back food and cook it for you in a magic box that makes things hotter. If you were a pharaoh and you broke your leg, you would die or limp forever. One of the two. One of the two.
Or they put you down like a horse. Yeah, assuming you didn't die of diarrhea first. Most people in human history died from diarrhea. Well, actually, it was dysentery, and you lose too much water, and it causes your heart to stop. So technically, you could argue that it was
generally nasty, basically things. Nasty things, not pleasant. I would, if I had to choose between being a poor person in America, not homeless, I mean, poor, moderately poor, which I am. I would rather be that than a pharaoh back, in 1000 BC or whatever the time range was.
You're kidding? Forget that. I would rather be the poorest man in America than a well-off man in Russia, 1916, 1917.
Yeah, well, that's because the well-off men in Russia were also dying.
Yeah. In fact, they were
like all it would have to be like someone at the point, you'd be like, he said something against Stalin, kill him, and then you would die about an hour later.
It's just, he said something against the revolution. Oh, guess we better starve him to death. I guess that's what we're supposed to do. You want to
have a revolution? Well, you're dead. Because Stalin doesn't like you.
Lenin didn't like you.
The point, okay, look, the point is, American culture rocks. It's not the best. Winston Churchill
yes,
said
it
something
is.
that was about capitalism that was so brilliant that also applies to American culture. And I'm just going to paraphrase this like American culture is the worst culture that is there, aside from every other culture. I just love that. It's like, yes, capitalism is the worst economic system that has ever been devised, except for every other one that exists.
Yeah. Democratic republics are the worst form of government we can possibly think of, except for every other government system in existence.
And you know what the funny thing is I actually had to have an argument with someone last week about whether or not America was really a democracy or a republic, and they didn't seem to understand what a constitution was at all. I couldn't believe it. I was like, come on, you seriously don't understand. You realize like it's not just a representative democracy. A representative democracy can do lots of shit that's still bad. The whole point of the Constitution is to protect the individual, not the majority. Right? And
ask them about the island of Lesbos.
And let's not also forget the fact that there is certain sections that are definitely not, originally the Senate was not elected by the people. It was appointed in place by the state legislatures. That is not democratic at all. That is very much autocrat, authoritarian.
Actually,
anyway.
That's similar to the system that was in place in the Roman Republic. Not exactly the same, but similar.
Right. Of course, now that's gone, and now the only thing that's still appointed, I believe, are judges and certain, members of political cabinet. But the judicial system is not voted in place. It is elected, or it is not elected. It's appointed into place. So even with the Senate being now democratically elected, America as a whole is not a representative democracy. It is still a constitutional republic.
Right. Seriously, if they ever talk to you about democracies, ask them about the island of Lesbos. Victor Davis Hanson tells the story about how the Athenians once voted to wipe out the people of the island of Lesbos because, hey, we don't like those guys. Let's exterminate them. Okay, that sounds like a good idea.
Oh, that's a fun Saturday activity.
So they vote, they send out their warships, and then a few hours later, the crowd's like, that was a terrible thing to do. Why did we do that? And one of the guys stands up, should we vote to say we don't have to exterminate the people? Yeah, I guess so. I guess we don't have to exterminate them. And so they had to send out more ships in order to intercept the other ships.
Oh my gosh.
As they're going ashore, the other ships show, they're like, wait, no, we just voted not to exterminate the people of the island. It's okay now.
Awkward. Listen, guys, we Lesbos, we really don't hate you. We were just having a bad day. I'm sorry. Let's call it let's call it a draw, okay? We don't kill you, you get to live. It's a win-win for both of us. Oh.
He said that's about the time when
man.
the Greeks decided that maybe democracy was just a tad fickle.
It needed a bit of appropriation. No, it needed a set of guiding principles, a minimum, a limiting principle, if you will.
We hate appropriations. And
right. Okay. So maybe the people watching now would like to know why we're talking about cultural appropriation in the first place. If you watch our previous video, Amandla was going on about cultural appropriation, about how apparently, in order for someone to appreciate and even participate in hip hop culture, one has to also be super aware of and understand the history of Black culture and all the issues that surround it. And we spent a very passionate, let's use that word, passionate, about half an hour, 45 minutes, talking about how if someone actually cared about the Black culture, Trayvon Martin and Mike Brown would not be the first names on their lips. In fact, it could be the last names on their lips, because there are so many other issues that are so fundamentally damaging to the Black community as a whole. Then 200 Black men. It's one of the things that always bugs me is people are saying like look at the systematic racism and oppression that goes on from the is like as if every time a black man gets killed by the cops, everyone just feels a sudden wave. Like yes, that's exactly how, out of the millions of like the 13 million black people that exist in the world, we're oppressing all of you by killing 200 of you. Like, are you serious? That's the oppression that's going on? I mean, look, any oppression that exists is bad, but that's it? That's your complaint? That's like not to be rude. That's like a feminist complaining about manspreading. Which, by the way, is justified because, unlike women, I have testicles. And they don't like being squished, which is why most men also don't cross their legs very tightly, if they cross them at all. Because here's the thing. Testicles, there's, like it hurts. I don't know.
Organs.
They are organs. They do things. They have very sensitive pain receptors because the production of baby batter is. Are you triggered, Josh?
Oh, so triggered. Oh, you were talking about man. I can't handle it.
So it wasn't. But what I don't know who came up with the term baby batter to refer him to semen, but whoever did, like.
Thank you.
Did they just say it and like they just spent the next 2 days like laughing about it, like baby batter, baby batter, batter up.
Harold, what are you talking about in the other room?
Anyways, if you've ever seen a man like adjust his pants or his crotch or those things, there's a reason why, and it's also the reason why men spread their legs when they sit down. Anyways. That was a tangent. Back to the main part, cultural appropriation, because Josh, you had told me, and I know a little bit about it, but you take the lead because I've not done the full research into it. You wanted to talk about some people way back when, and one of them started an institute.
Oh, okay. Yes. There was some, I don't know if you know his name. Let me know. Booker T. Washington, kind of an obscure fellow.
Yeah, I've heard it like once or twice. I mean, like was he a librarian? Like in DC, is that what he did?
Well, he must have been. Actually, it's funny.
Okay,
I
mean,
read,
he must have been a really good librarian.
Oh, he was. It's funny because Booker T. Washington is the name that most Americans recognize, but the guy he was debating against, you only really know about him either if you're an activist or if you run into activists a lot of time. Du Bois. Most people don't remember him, and yet he seems to be the more influential figure.
Now, is he the one who came up with the idea of the talented 10th?
That's him.
Okay.
The debate was this. Like, okay, so we're not slaves anymore, but we're still experiencing prejudice. And no, this isn't the, oh no, you said...
Oh no, a lady followed me around, and when I went shopping, she must have thought I was a thief. Not that kind of prejudice, but like more like Jim Crow laws and
this was KKK murdering people.
Yes, like the actual oppression that goes on because heaven forbid someone be an idiot.
And so this was an actual problem. Booker T. Washington, the guy who founded the Tuskegee Institute, the school that pretty much changed everybody's minds on what Black Americans were capable of, he made this argument. He said, listen, they're never going to accept us if they never respect us. And they're never going to respect us unless not only don't work as hard as white Americans, work harder. You have to be more hungry than they are. You have to be more determined. You have to be more articulate. You have to be better in every single way than your white neighbors, because otherwise they will never acknowledge you.
They will if you do not do not only as good as them but better than them, then they will always look down on you and find an excuse to sneer at you and be like, oh yeah, he's just a black man. He's just that. There's nothing else.
There's actually a few examples that support this. For example, near the end of the Civil War, when the Confederates were talking about offering slaves their freedom in exchange for fighting, one of the guys stood up and said, if it turns out that blacks make as fine soldiers as whites, then our entire philosophy on slavery is wrong. Mm-hmm. That was the Confederacy saying this. And again, after the guys from the Tuskegee Institute formed the Tuskegee Airmen, the guys who never lost a bomber in World War II, who carried out their missions with such efficiency and such effectiveness that they made military history.
Mm-hmm.
They live up to this idea. Booker T. Washington said, listen, don't demand anything from whites. The fact of the matter is, oftentimes the whites weren't able to give them anything anyway. He talks about how a lot of his fellow former slaves had to send money to the former masters just because slavery, as Alexis de Tocqueville points out, so erodes your character, you are incapable of caring for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And so the slaves actually had to come and help the masters be able to eat for several years.
That's pretty nasty.
And it was funny.
I'm not gonna lie. If I was a former slave, there would be a small part of me, maybe a large part, I'm not sure, who might say like, listen, massa, I'll help you out, but first you need to go and strip yourself off and go off in that cornfield and do some hoeing. Well, I'm gonna sit here with this whip.
A lot of the former masters did end up doing some pretty undignified things in order to make money. And so the slaves, the former slaves actually felt sorry for their masters. Heck, they felt sorry for their masters while they were still slaves. That was the situation. Yeah, they were bad instances, and Booker T. Washington documents them somewhat in his book Up From Slavery, which is a fantastic book, I might add.
Very cool.
But he said, listen, if you prove that you are not only as good a man as they are, but you are better, that you have more character, more drive, more learned, you will succeed. Du Bois said, you Negroes are basically stupid. So the talented 10th, here's what we'll do. We'll demand that whites give us
him a total like Southern drawl.
Well, 90% of the black population lived in the South, and so most of them, in fact, did have Southern accents, which, by the way, I might add, is actually from Southern England. The Southern accent is actually English. It just fell out of favor in England, but it remained in the American South. So the Southern accent is actually an English accent.
A proper English accent.
Yes, Thomas Sowell actually documents this in his book, Black Rednecks and White Liberals. It's hilarious when you think about it. But yes, it's actually... Ebonics is mostly slang from rural England.
But don't go telling them that. They might not like it.
They might not like...
They might become upset that they're culturally appropriating rural England.
Seriously. Axe instead of ask, dis, dat, chitlins, all English. All of it. That tangent aside, Du Bois basically said, we'll make white America pay, make them give us money, and then the talented 10th will direct blacks in the proper path.
That's right. And of course, by the talented 10th, we're talking about men like Reverend Al Sharpton, who so well helps out his fellow black men by getting really rich by forcing companies to pay him money lest he accuse them of being racist, and
accepting apologies.
Very helpful. The funny thing is, like men like Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton have been around for decades. Have they done anything to help? Anything whatsoever? Like currently, under our black president Barack Obama, the black community is worse off than they were under the rich white old man George Bush, which is sad. That's really sad.
Yeah.
And the thing is you can't blame the repression on George Bush because the housing bubble was caused by legislation that was passed under Bill Clinton. So either it's the first black president who's responsible for black people for the entire country being under an economic repression, or it's the other first black president who was responsible for black people being under such terrible. And here's the thing. We laugh about it, but it really, for every black person who is unemployed as a result of this, it's not a joke for them.
Their lives matter,
right?
As it happens.
As it happens. But see, Al Sharpton's not helping them. They're just stirring up racial animus. All the writers in Ferguson, for example, are just destroying, and they're destroying black businesses too. like people who spent their entire lives working at this business, to bring economic wealth and ability to that city, are not able to do so because their businesses is being destroyed by rioters who then turn around and say who turn around to the government and say you have to do this thing. Yeah, I made a poopy. You need to go pick it up or else.
Somebody has to pay.
See, that's the thing. If you take a crying toddler, okay, give them an adult body, but keep the crying toddler brain, okay, and put a whole bunch of them in Ferguson, you get the exact same result. Exactly.
If I can't have it, nobody can.
Let's not forget the Lions, right? The Lions, where everyone just lies down. Like, what is that other than a toddler holding their breath? You have to help her out. I want the cookie. Until they pass out. By the way, this is the inner asshole in me, but I really hope there was someone in there, just somebody, who went in with some itching powder and just sprinkled it around.
That's
just went to the line and just maybe some sneezing powder and just because all you're doing is, here's the thing, is a lion does not actually cause any productive dialogue. You cannot go and transmit information to anyone if you're sitting there quietly, even sleeping, pretending to be dead. You can't. That's not how you have a conversation. All you really tell other people when you do that is that you really believe something, and you're willing to be an ass about it and get in everyone's way to tell them that but you can't explain why you do it because you're busy being dead. You can't explain how you came to your beliefs because you're busy being dead. You can't explain the facts on which you base your beliefs because you're busy being dead. You can't.
Oh, yes.
If you want to have a proper discussion, you have to have a proper discussion where you say, look, I'm a reasonable person. I believe that you are a reasonable person. Let's have a dialogue where I bring to the table what my experience is, not just what my experience is, but also the facts that I know, not just the assumptions that I have, but the actual like hard information that can be written down. I bring that to the table, and then you bring your experience to me and the information that you have, and we will respect each other's experiences and also look at each other's information. And that's the problem, is because every time I have a conversation with someone of color on Twitter, almost inevitably, I've had a few conversations that were good, where there was like an actual transfer of information and we actually walked away like having gained. But for the most part, it's not that. Because as a straight white male, in every social conversation that ever occurs, the irony is that according to black activists and according to feminists, the male experience, the white male experience is valued above everyone. But it's not. It's not, because if I actually went into the conversation and talked, if my experience was valued above everyone else, then everyone would be listening to what I have to say. But because I'm white and male, it's not. It's not like they put it on even ground. It's like their experience matters. Oh, you said something, you white cis hetero scum. Tell me more about your male cheaters.
Hashtag kill all men.
By the way, feminists, if you ever listen, whenever you talk and make jokes about drinking male cheers, just understand.
Oh boy.
Given that men don't necessarily cry, think about the place from which it might come a tear-like liquid from a man. You can even look this up on Urban Dictionary. Male tears is a euphemism for cum, aka semen, aka baby batter.
And AKA, it all comes together.
If you like to drink male tears, there are a lot of men laughing at you right now. And saying, yes, it's a good. You always swallow, never spit. That's very important. That's a very good quality to have in a woman.
Yes, make it your profile picture wearing that shirt. Yes, we're all totally respecting you right now and your position.
And of course, what better way to encourage dialogue between two people by one side openly insulting the other? I mean, it's such a perfect. You can tell there's no sarcasm whatsoever. I'm so sincere when I say that. It's really mockery and sarcasm is such a great way to make a point. I mean, really, like, and it's really great. Like, listen, feminists,
So nuanced.
you exactly. You know, you transmit so much information when you are mocking. You know, you really make people want to listen to you, right? Just like you really want to listen to me when I speak in this type of voice, because being condescending is where all the magic and love happens in this world.
The specificity of the information you transmit to us via your nuances of irony, if you will.
It's delicious. It's just
to sprinkle it into your cup of male tears. Don't worry.
it's exactly like there's already enough salt in there. You just need a little bit of pepper. Just a little bit though.
Okay.
What I want to know is like okay, I could understand using like those little, like, you know, the little communion cups that people use for grape juice. I can understand using that to drink male tears, but like a mug, like you have a whole mug, like a mug, like.
I don't want to know what to do on the weekends.
Like, do you just like go like collecting male tears from like all the men, like on it, like deposit your male tears here, sir? Like, is that, and you just like wait till like 20 men have cried for you, and then you drink it? Is that what goes on?
Do you keep them in a greenhouse? Grow it?
What? I don't think. Listen, Josh, I know you say people should have strong roots, but men don't grow in pots.
Oh. Well, the guy on the street told me he couldn't live without pot, and so I just assumed.
I was actually. Anyways. So cultural appropriation, Booker T. Washington. You know what the interesting thing is, and Josh, you can comment on this more than I can, is before the 1970s and before the 1960s, you comment, I think especially during the 20s, 30s, and 40s, that blacks were like more economically prosperous, especially when it comes to their culture, than white people were.
Okay, to stress, I am not the expert on this. If you want the expert, talk to Thomas Sowell, because he wrote not just the book on it, he wrote several books on this topic.
And each one is the book on it.
And he says, time and time again, at the height of Jim Crow, now during the 1930s especially, black marriage, there was a lower divorce rate. They had higher overall income. And by the way, before you say, well, blacks were held back in education, Northern blacks scored significantly better than Southern whites. Significantly better. In fact, they did multiple tests to see, well, are blacks just inferior genetically, unable to learn? Well, when U.S. soldiers stationed in Germany were marrying black and white soldiers alike, when they married German women and had kids and they were put into German schools, IQs on average, identical.
Yeah. Well, that's the very interesting thing is that in France, and let's get to the chase on this. The difference at this point, and I'm going to go off on the assumption that those people watching, if you have not watched our previous video on cultural appropriation, you should watch that, because I'm going to try to just reference the things I've said there, not repeat them over again.
Do it.
Do it now.
Do it now.
Right now, if you go to France, there's no black culture in France. There's just black Frenchmen and white Frenchmen, for whatever number of black Frenchmen there are. There is no, if you go to England, there's no white Englishman versus black Englishman. If you go to Norway, there's no white Norwegian and black Norwegian. I mean, it's ignoring the very small amounts of black people in those countries. There is no cultural difference. And astoundingly, there's also no problem with race being a big issue either, or racism being an issue. But you go to America, and as I discussed previously in the previous video, how, you know, black people basically, within black culture, basically people just hold each other down. Like, they discourage kids from getting good test grades. They discourage them from being respectful of other people.
Grab at the bucket.
They basically do this whole thing where they sabotage themselves in almost every way possible. And almost like all the ways you could possibly sabotage a person, almost guarantee they end up in grinding poverty. They do that to themselves. And there's this total like black culture which tries to isolate itself from white culture, and then they complain about racism, while pointing to statistics that actually explain, ironically, what is most likely a result of two clashing cultures, one of which is mired in grinding poverty due to not whites, but due to the actions of black people. Back in the Jim Crow era, there were people who were white people who conspired even sometimes to hold black people down. Now they don't have to. Okay, it's the funny thing. This is the thing that astounds me, Josh, is that, you know, even if white people wanted to hold black people down, they don't have to, because black people do it to themselves. Not all black people, but within the community, within the black community, there are many individuals who do that, and it's kind of like it's disheartening on the level of, like, you are basically proving every KKK member right. And that really sucks, because I don't like the KKK. I would prefer that they be wrong. I would rather be jealous of black people because they're scoring higher than me, as was intended by, well, later on Thomas Sowell, but Booker T. Washington before him. By the way, Thomas Sowell is a genius. Like, in my book, I hope someday to someday have him pat me on the head and be like, there's a good white boy.
You have done well.
You have done well, Jonathan. but in no way do I expect that I will reach the level of learnedness and respect that he garners. Ironically, not from the black community. The black community, on the by and large, does not respect Thomas Sowell. In fact, there are some words described in Thomas Sowell that are quite racist in nature, attributed to him by mostly black people.
Or social justice warriors.
House Negro.
Oh.
Sorry.
You're right there.
Yeah, bad cough. Sorry.
Ah, it's terrible.
What's it else?
It's funny. Thomas Sowell actually has a quote. I can't remember it exactly, so I'll just paraphrase it. When talking about privilege or your station in life, he says, no one chooses to be born into poverty. No one can be blamed for being born into a bad situation. However, the people who perpetuate the bad situation can be blamed.
Yeah, if you choose to do something that like any amount of research will basically show, yeah, if you do this, you're almost guaranteeing poverty. You know, if you have a child out of wedlock while not having a job and possibly not even having to graduate from high school, and then let that child be told by their peers, and sometimes even by yourself, that they can't have, you know, good grades or else they're trying to suck up to the white man. They can't respect cops or else they're trying to suck up to the pig. You know, if you do those things, you are to blame for that child's eventual poverty, the generational poverty that will follow you. And then you are also partially responsible for any violent crimes that occur on behalf of that poverty, because as we all know, grinding poverty is directly associated with violent crime. On to you, Josh.
Just a thought. It's funny. Time and time and time and time and time and time and time again, Thomas Sowell brings up examples how, as a matter of fact, blacks have actually been held back in American history. No one's denying that. No one's denying slavery is awful. But saying that this country was built on favoring whites over blacks, built on slave labor, won. South was destroyed in the Civil War. You'll find a few odd buildings with slave fingerprints on it, but those big plantations, gone. Mm-hmm. Those giant buildings you thinking built by slaves, gone. The land that was worked by slaves, either they found a machine to do it better, or it's unfarmable now. So the idea that the South is somehow still benefiting from slavery, not a chance. 2, the idea that slavery is still affecting people today. Why isn't it affecting the Irish? Yeah. Why isn't it affecting Jews? Jews had 6 million murdered.
Let's not forget the Chinese. The Chinese built the railroads, okay? Chinese slaves built much of the railroads across America, and arguably those railroads helped fuel the industrial age, which brought America from being a new country into the superpower that it would eventually become. If anyone has an argument that they are the ones off of whom America was built, the Chinese have that. But guess what? Chinese don't complain about it. They don't complain about cultural appropriation. They don't complain about the system being against them. And interestingly enough, they are now in the place of the 1920s blacks. where the Chinese children are the ones who are doing better in school. They're the ones who are having higher earning jobs. They're the ones who are having lower divorce rates. I think this is what the other two I know for a fact are true.
Yeah, actually, everything you say is true. It's true of Chinese, Japanese, to an extent, Koreans, I think.
And especially within the
Philippines.
first 2 generations of new immigrants, especially within the first 2. It fades out as they integrate more into American culture, sadly.
Yeah, it's true. Actually, fun fact, it's also true of people immigrating from certain sections of Africa, especially, if I recall correctly, South Africa, especially folks coming from
country
there.
Of South Africa?
Yes.
Okay.
Pretty sure. Again, I'm a little shaky on that one, but
here's the end point, if I may. The end point is that in the 1920s and 30s and 40s, all the way through the Jim Crow era, blacks were doing better than whites economically, in terms of family stability and in terms of the family even staying together in the first place. Multiple factors, both economic and cultural. Blacks were doing better than whites, despite provable, like Jim Crow level, like outright systematic discrimination, both on the level of the government and on the level of individuals. And they're doing better than the blacks are doing today. Guess what? You don't have an excuse. You don't. I'm sorry. You have just as little excuse as a white person born into poverty. And I should know, because I lived in poverty for most of my life. Like not just like poverty, like, oh, it sucks, but like poverty, like the refrigerator is literally empty except for a single bowl of spaghetti. That actually happened once. And more than once.
yeah.
Coming out of poverty is a choice, and you can choose to look for excuses, or you can say, you know what, no matter what the oppression or anything that I might face, no matter what would try to keep me down, I'm going to rise above and I'm going to do better despite any systematic oppression that may result, or any individual oppression that may come against me. The blacks in the 1920s all the way up through until the Talented 10th idea came along, did that, and they succeeded, and they did better than the whites. And now you have even less oppression, to the point where now some of the oppression that gets complained about is made up. So at this point, the damage that is in the black community is not a fault of white culture. It is not a fault of American systematic racism. It is not a fault of your average white person. Most whites actually in America having come from immigration and not from the founding fathers' day, and having not been here around slavery. The fault lies entirely with yourself. And if you choose to go around and continue complaining, then you are just perpetuating the original problem.
So why do we bring all this up? Why are we talking about black oppression? Because
black people won't fucking stop talking about it. That's why. And the media, mostly the media, but also I don't, again, not to stereotype. I mean, like I've had multiple conversations with black people where we don't talk about anything regarding race or anything like it's just whatever. But you go on Twitter and
they find you.
Twitter is just fucked up. It really is. Like I go on Twitter in spurts because I cannot stand to be on there full time. And it's not that Twitter itself is a bad place, but people are very outspoken there. Yeah. And so if you want to comment on something political, it's like fucking, like, it's not just like sticking your hand in the river. It's like diving in full force. And like some people can stand to do that day in and day out. There's some people I have a lot of respect for who can do that. Nick Searcy goes and just trolls liberals.
Oh, that kid drinks from the fire hose. You kidding?
Oh my god, yeah. He's like, give it to me, and I'm sitting here like, I'll go for a swim like every couple weeks.
Okay, well,
I'm good. I'll go dry off. I'll go back to my house. We'll go roast some marshmallows over the fire. You go stay in that river, Nick. I'll be over here, not being soaking wet.
Good luck, buddy.
Memories.
Look, there is an actual reason behind this, though, because the reason why we talk about the oppression of blacks, or the lack thereof, that there's not the cards are not stacked against you. No one's out to get you. The reason we talk about this is because the whole argument behind cultural appropriation is more than just you took something from another culture. Yes, we get it. Social justice warriors, shut up. We know that's not what you're saying. That's why you're not upset at St. Patrick's Day parades or frickin' Lucky Charms.
I'll bet you there's a couple that are. There's like maybe like 2 or 3. They're sitting there like at their Lucky Charms, like they go to their parents' house and there's Lucky Charms. They're like, Mom, how dare you appropriate Irish culture and reduce it to a cartoon?
It's like showing up to is showing up to dinner in blackface. It's like, how could you? Except this time it's red face. You're showing up to dinner in red face. How could you? What, are we going to Riverdance to the table next? You are so offensive right now. So we know why you're not outraged that we're appropriating German beer, for example. We know why you're not upset.
To be fair, Pennsylvania was German Dutch heritage. So
I'm allowed to talk about German beer.
And I, as a Pennsylvanian, can drink all the fucking German beer I want, and I am respecting my own culture. Aside from the fact that I actually came from Norway, but you know, I'm respecting the heritage of my land. after 1700s, it's prior to the 1700s. Respecting the land would have been killing deer with a bow, raping another tribe, and then dying of dysentery. Oh, sorry. Did we? Were we still going with the whole myth that all the Native Americans were peaceful people? Sorry.
Good thing we didn't appropriate that culture. Can you imagine if we brought that with us?
Oh, geez. You know, I would sit here just quaking in my moccasins in fear and self-loathing. I'll tell you that much. All right, is that it for this time? I think we're good. Yeah.
I think no, actually there are a couple more stories I want to bring up because social justice is relentless. And look, I'm not talking to the average Joe on the street right now, okay? People are concerned that there are problems with our culture and how we deal with, for example, blacks in the legal system. You're wrong, but I get it. But for a moment, I'd like to talk directly to the social justice warriors. I know who you are, and I know, more importantly, what you are. I know what you're for.
And also where you live and what you eat. And
no, I don't care to know any of those things, but I know what's really going on. For example, I don't know if you heard about this story that we all hear about the ones like, oh, you're not allowed to use dreadlocks because that's appropriating culture. But lately, I've been following stories like, for example, there was a museum that was allowing people to come in and try on kimonos for part of their Japanese exhibit, and you could take a picture with yourself wearing a kimono. And social justice warriors came out and said, you're appropriating Japanese culture. How dare you wear a kimono if you don't understand the deep nuances of it? I've been studying Japanese for 2 years, and I don't pretend to know enough about Japanese culture, but I apparently know enough to tell you that you don't know enough. And so I mentioned this a few times back. I started following J-bloggers a lot, and it's funny. I'll send you a link to this later. Maybe we can post it in the description or something. Rachel and June, love that channel. It's fantastic. And it's funny. Rachel, a girl originally from America, now with her husband living in Japan, decided to ask her husband, so when is it okay for an American to wear a kimono? Any time. Well, what if they wear it wrong? Japanese people don't wear it correctly most of the time. Well, what if they're doing it in a really revealing way? We'd probably be more shocked by your cleavage than you wearing a kimono. Just say. Well, what if they don't know what it means? Still okay. Well, what if they design something based on a kimono? That sounds pretty good. Can we go see it? I think I'd like to see that. And this guy, June, he's a good sport. He actually makes videos. He says, guys, believe it or not, Japanese people are happy when Westerners are curious about our culture. When you guys are complaining about racism or appropriation, we're saying, hey, Westerners actually like our stuff. This is good.
Yeah, I've never met a Chinese person who looked at me with disdain for like using chopsticks at a Chinese restaurant. Like never. Because here's the thing. They're probably pissed off at the fact that they have to have forks. To be honest. I mean, if you're going to go, look, here's the thing. And you know what? This kind of pisses me off because we talk about cultural appropriation. I'm willing to bet that every person who has ever complained about cultural appropriation has probably eaten Chinese. Probably eaten Chinese.
Or spaghetti.
And I don't see you complaining, dear SJW. SJ-Dub for short. I don't see you, dear SJ-Dub, complaining about the preponderance of McDonald's and the rest of the Eastern Hemisphere. Where's your complaints about that, huh? I mean, come on. I mean, they're appropriating our fast food culture.
You want to see cultural appropriation?
Where is your outrage?
Go to a Korean pizza place. Okay, John, listen to this. Have you ever heard of cheese corn? It's a dish where they have corn with mozzarella cheese on it, and it's
Really?
actually
So,
pretty good.
so cheese corn is like corn with cheese.
Yeah, but you see,
Cool.
the Koreans had this funny idea. They took cheese corn and pizza and put it together, and so they put corn on top of their pizza. Not only are they appropriating pizza, they put corn on it.
That's the,
And you're like, it
that
sounds
sounds like an
disgusting,
unforgivable sin to me, Josh.
but
We should
actually,
taste it or something.
if you think about it, if you're the kind of guy who likes putting cornmeal on the bottom, and if you've had cheese corn and it's delicious, you're not thinking, oh, cultural appropriation, how they take Italian or American food, because pizza is basically American. Italian stole it back later,
Yeah.
but
Now it's American.
no, I mean the tomato wasn't part of Italian cuisine until like what, the 1800s, I think, and so they basically stole the pizza from us, at least its incarnation as we know it today.
I just want to
And
know:
so-
are there SJWs that are like going to Native American places and like confronting them about their use of horses? Because Westerners brought over the horse. You know, before the Europeans came over to North America, there was no such thing as an American horse. They didn't exist. They came from Europe. And now every time you see like a mural or a painting of Tonto or whatever, I swear, like every other time there's a guy on a horse. Like, talk about the freaking cultural appropriation that's going on there.
Oh, you think that's bad? They culturally appropriated the wheel from us.
Really?
They didn't have the wheel before we showed up.
How horrible is that, man? I mean,
The
seriously.
wheel is a part of my heritage. Do you know what my last name means? My last name is actually a British coat of arms. Now, mind you, I'm probably not descended from knights. Who's probably a guy who's just trying to sound important, so he changed his name to the local lord. But still, it's a part of my culture. It's a part of my heritage. The wheel means something to my ancestors.
Are you sure? Are you? Well, I can't say your last name, but are you sure you weren't more related to Ronald McDonald?
I wish I were related to Ronald McDonald, but
No one else is gonna get that joke except for you and me. It's okay.
no,
okay,
but
no one else.
serious. My last name actually does mean that. And do you know what I think of people appropriating English tea or appropriating, I don't know, Jonathan Edwards' speech style? Jonathan
What
Edwards
do you
happened
think
to
of
be one of my
tea
ancestors.
drinker?
Whoa, hey, shots fired. Whoa, whoa.
Oh, sorry. I just saw Stephen Colbert out of the corner of my eye. I lost it for a minute.
What you guys, SJ Dubs, call cultural appropriation, we call interaction. Funny thing, in last live stream, I talked about how Western music drew a lot of its influences from the Turks, our mortal enemy. Did anyone actually think that the Turks were better? Europe has this strange fascination, at least it did back in the day, with drawing things from its mortal enemies. People who are trying to kill them. The way I see it, Winston Churchill, for example, actually had a lot of respect for Saudi Arabia. Mind you, he wrote scathing reviews on the way they treated women, the way they treated their own, I'd call them citizens, but really they were subjects. He was appalled by the behavior. However, he still admired them. That's what Europe does.
They made really nice swords, of course.
Not really, but kind of.
Come on, man. A scimitar. Come on, who doesn't want one of those?
Okay, I do want one of those. Actually, I want a dozen, but that's another issue.
Does that? I don't know. If I wanted a dozen something, I'd take a dozen Lamborghinis. Going back to our previous conversation, I'll take a dozen. Take like one scimitar, dozen Lamborghinis.
Why not both?
Maybe like maybe a Lamborghini with a minigun turret mounted on top of it. I would take one of those in a heartbeat.
I want a Lamborghini with frickin' scimitars welded to the front.
So no one would ever cut you off. No one would ever drive too close, man. I'll tell you what, like people would suddenly get really respectful around you. Like New Jersey traffic, forget about it. They'll just give you this nice wide berth and you just drive all to yourself.
Mind you, they'd show you the state bird the entire way up, but hey, pretty much.
You mean they might give you some sign language for being pissed off?
Oh my, that's how we say hello, but that's all right.
Oh, okay. All right, this has been the Conservative Echo Chamber coming to you from Pennsylvania and New Jersey. Well, New York actually now. Right, reminding you to stay conservative.
Get me out. I don't like this state.
That's right. Don't go. You can come to, if you're a conservative, you can come to Pennsylvania. You can go to Texas. You can come to North Dakota. New York is not your friend, man. New York is, it's just leave that place.
It's evil.
Can you feel it sucking out your life force, man? It's just like.
Oddly enough, it's going out through the pocket where my wallet is. I wonder if there's a connection.
I don't know. I don't know. Anyways, it's been the Conservative Echo Chamber. See you guys later.
Johnny.